Monday, August 29th. Welcome to another episode of Let There Be Talk, episode number 662. Brought to you by my podcast network, cactusradionetwork.com. You can find all of my podcasts for free at cactusradionetwork.com. Also, join the Patreon. Support the podcast and everything that I do. Patreon.com/Dean Delray. You'll get all kinds of Zoom action and bonus episodes. Patreon.com/Dean Delray. Good times, people. Good times. Thank you all for joining me here each and every week. Great guest today. It is an honor to have this person on. I had her father on, who is Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics, and I got an email recently that said, would you like to have his daughter on, Kaya Stewart? And I was like, well, let me hear the music. You know, just because her dad is famous doesn't mean I'm just going to pop her onto the show. Everybody that's been listening to the show for 11 years knows that I have to dig the music. And they sent me over the record, and I was pretty blown away, actually. I was immediately drawn into this song called If Things Go South, which is the title of her new record coming out. And I was just floored how great it was. And dug into the record and just started falling in love with some of these songs on here, like Independence and Jealous and Honey. Some great songs on here. I was like, wow, who wrote these songs? Did her dad write them? No, it turns out that during the pandemic, she was having some difficulties, was diagnosed with a serious case of OCD, didn't know what to do, headed out to Nashville to meet up with her dad, said, I want to write a couple songs, and boom, they sat down and did a full record, and it's about to come out, and it's very, very good. This girl's story is incredible. She was first record deal with Warner Brothers. Went out on the Vans Warped Tour. We find out all about what that's like. She was discovered on Soundcloud, so I immediately wanted to hear that story. It's wild to think about how many songs are out on SoundCloud and Bandcamp, and how does it hit? Somebody hear it and spread the word. You think about it, SoundCloud and Bandcamp and all that stuff is like the old school Metallica grassroots way. You put stuff up and hope it starts to, catch fire. That's basically what you've got these days, is just social media and all these different platforms. And you can put it all out there, and people do. But it takes the people out there like you guys out there yourselves, sharing it, telling people at your work, telling people, your friends, your neighbors, whatever, that, hey, I heard a great song today. I heard a funny joke today, and bam. And next thing you know, people were knocking on her door to sign her for a record deal. So we hear about that. The big machine, Warner Brothers, picking her up. Here she is, a 13, 14-year-old girl. She got a mohawk. She's singing some R&B flavored music. And then they try to change it a little bit. She leaves the label. And now she's out on her own. Her record is coming out on her dad's label. And this record's really good, man. It's got some great songs. If you're into... it's hard for me to describe it, actually. It's got a little bit of Chris Stapleton. It's got a little bit of Lucinda Williams. It's got a little bit of maybe Billie Eilish in there. But the bottom line is the songwriting is fantastic and her singing is incredible. So, great guest today to talk to. Right here on Let There Be Talk. Before we get into the episode, I want to give you a couple of heads up. This episode is brought to you by my fantastic sponsor, BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp. BetterHelp. I got a special offer for all my listeners right now. Get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp.com/Delray. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/Delray. What is BetterHelp? Well, I'll tell you right now, it's not an online crisis line. It's therapy done securely right on your computer. You don't have to go to an office anymore. You don't have to drive downtown, anything. You just log in anytime you want, sends a message to your therapist, and bam, you can seek out full-blown therapy by pros. This stuff definitely helps. Therapy's cool, man. A lot of people having tough times over the last 3-4 years, especially with the pandemic and losing jobs or, maybe loved ones, anything like that. You need to talk to somebody. This is perfect. BetterHelp.com/Delray. That's BetterHelp.com/DELRAY. 10% off. Get your head together, man. Also, I want to tell you guys, give a heads up, about to start this Marcus King tour, the Youngblood tour. We start on, September 7th, and we're going everywhere. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys. It's going to be a comedy and rock and roll tour. We start in Philly on September 9th, and we go all the way across the states till 10/27. We end in New Orleans. Everywhere in there. There's Nashville, there's Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, there's Austin, Texas, there's Portland, Oregon, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, everywhere. Salt Lake City, St. Louis. It's all over. Tour dates are at DeanDelRay.com, and so is my merch right there. I have a fantastic dog, and I want her to live a long life, so I feed her only the cleanest food. Migos Dog. MIGOSDOG.com. Migos Dog. If you live in California, please get this food for your dog. Free of preservatives, dyes, fillers, and byproducts. Just absolutely next level. Gertie eats the salmon. It's all clean. It's only the best produce and protein. It's kind of like a mini meatball. Brown rice, sprouted, quinoa, got some spinach, kale, green beans. Gertie loves this food. And, don't be getting that terrible food out there that's got sawdust in it and made in China and all kinds of junk. Migos Dog Food is committed to sourcing the freshest and finest restaurant quality ingredients. All of the proteins are ethically and humanely raised, and the veggies are from certified local partners. Migos, MIGOSDOG.com. Check them out, California. Great. You can get it at Erewhon and all kinds of places are carrying it now. I absolutely love this stuff. You've got to get it. Get your Migos. They also got toppers you can put on top of a dry food and some supplements. It's just great. Migos Dog Food. Well, I feel pretty good. Just got back from, where was I? I was in Reading, Pennsylvania, and I was in Buffalo, New York with the mighty King Bill Burr. It was great to see him. I had not talked to him face-to-face since he had sold out Fenway, 36,000 tickets. So it was awesome to hang out with him, do some shows. We did a couple arenas. We did the Sabre Arena where the hockey team plays out there in Buffalo. I hadn't been to Buffalo in like 6 years, so it was great. And then Reading, Pennsylvania, which was fantastic. I hadn't been there. And if you are following me from the Pennsylvania gigs, I have a headlining weekend coming up at Soul Joel's out there in Potterstown, Pennsylvania. That's coming up December 2nd. And get your tickets for that. Lots of shows coming up for the old Del Rey on that Marcus King tour and some headlining tours and some more Bill Burr dates. Thank you, everybody, for your support. And if you dig those video clips I stuck up on Instagram, please share them all over your stories or anywhere you can. Text them to people, whatever you want to do. Trying to get some of the comedy out there. I love you guys, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Here we go. Candles are lit. Kaya Stewart. All right, here we are. Another episode of Let There Be Talk. And we have a new artist, fairly new. She's been playing music for a while, but she's got a new record coming out, and she's new to me. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kaya Stewart.
Kaya Stewart.
That's me.
Dave Stewart's daughter.
Yes.
Who I had on the show.
I was just listening to that episode on my way over here. I loved it. It was awesome.
Oh, it was great to have him in here.
Yeah.
It was like he had found out that he was going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that day.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That was huge. I mean, I remember when we found out, because I have a lot of siblings, we were all calling each other like, oh my God, this is crazy. But yeah, no, I'm super excited for them.
How many siblings you got?
I have 3 siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all grew up together down the street from here.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I have 2 brothers who grew up we were all born in London, but they moved over here when they were already like teenagers, and we have a big age gap. So they kind of got the best of both worlds, whereas me and my little sister grew up here.
So you're living in LA still? And
I still live
your dad's
here.
in Nashville, right?
He's in Nashville, yeah.
Yeah, that's classic.
Yeah, Nashville's great. I love it. I thought about moving there, but I don't think I've gotten my full LA out of me yet. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I still have like a couple more years here, and then I'll head over there.
Yeah. You're 22, right?
I'm 22, yeah.
Yeah, you got to burn it up here for a while.
Exactly.
Before you get into your Nashville days.
Exactly. I'm like, I feel like I still have a little more time to like really experience LA, but
What do you like to do in LA? Do you go out clubbing?
I would say honestly, I grew up in the Valley, so when I live in the West Side now, so when I moved over there, unless you're from LA, it's so different. Like, to move over there, it literally felt like I was moving to a new city, because it's like its own little world over there.
Oh yeah.
And I moved out and I got my own place when I was 18. I lived here when I was 18 in the Valley. I moved away from home, literally down the street in Ventura, near Ventura. And then when I turned 20, I decided I was going to live on the West Side, and it really felt like I moved to a different state. I was like,
oh, yeah.
Goodbye, family. Like, this is a whole new world over here.
Oh,
But
yeah. If you live over there, people, you don't see people anymore.
no, like trying to get someone from the Valley to come to my apartment in West Hollywood it's not happening. They're not coming.
It's wild, right?
Yeah, and it's only 15 minutes, but to everyone else, it feels like an eternity of a drive.
Well, it's 15 minutes at 2 a.m.
Exactly. With traffic, it's pretty bad.
What made you go over there?
I think I'd grown up in the Valley my whole life, and I knew I wanted to stay in LA, but I wanted to be somewhere different. And I played a lot of shows over there. Like, there's a lot of, when I was younger, there was a lot of small kind of little clubs that you could play at in West Hollywood. And I was like, well, that's where I'm playing all my shows and doing all that. So I'll live over there. I have friends who lived there, and I wanted something different, but not outside of LA.
Right. And were you playing like acoustic solo shows, or what kind of shows were you playing?
At that age, I would play to literally anyone who would listen to me. And then whether that was acoustic, or if I was just there by myself, or if I had a full band, I was playing everywhere.
So obviously, I mean, you grow up around Dave Stewart, and I would say, I'm really good friends with Jacob Dylan. It's got to be, there's this weird double-edged sword. People go, they got it easy. Their dad's famous. And it's like, no, that's extra hard, because then people just go like, oh, what do they think? They're just their dad or whatever. They're going to get on the coattails. So it's very, very hard to get into that same business. It's very rare that people get their own identity. Jacob killed it, of course, with the mini records. But you're growing up in a music household. How do it just grabs you, right?
I think it's funny, because I have a lot of friends whose parents are in the industry as well. And I think you have to look at it one of two ways. You can go down the route where you're like, fuck you, I'm my own person. Sorry, can I say that on here?
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck you, I'm my own person. Like, I don't want anything to do with you. Or in my case, like, luckily, I really get along with my dad. He taught me literally everything I know about making music. And like, he's the reason I fell in love with music, which is amazing, that I was like, I just don't see me not like embracing that, and like, working with him and understand, like, having people understand that, like, I would say it is difficult. Okay, the perception of other people is what's difficult.
Right, of course.
Like, that's the thing that I feel like is the most annoying is like other people are always like, oh, silver spoon. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
this is perfect.
It's the only industry they do it in too. Like,
I know.
If you're a plumber and then you hand down your trade to your son, they don't go like, oh, look at this dick.
Yeah,
trying to be a plumber like his dad. It's crazy.
Well, that's why that whole like father and son's bait shop and like, you know what I mean? Like, it's that's such a normal thing to do, is go into the industry of your parents. I have so many friends I have a friend whose dad's a real estate agent. So my friend started doing real estate. I mean, it's just, it for some reason with music, even with acting though, like if a kid becomes an actor because their mom or dad was an actor, like no one really says anything. But for some reason with music, it's like,
well, especially if the dad or mom is a level of, like, say, Dave Stewart, who's wrote a zillion hits and is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and has nothing but the greatest success and critical acclaim. You know, people, the critics love him also. So yeah, it makes it even harder. You know,
it totally does. But I think, honestly, what I've done because I fell in love with music when I was so young, and it was kind of like this mutual understanding with my parents that they were like, oh, she's not going to do anything else. Like, there's just no way. Once I found that lane of like, oh my God, I totally get why you're obsessed with this, because now I'm obsessed with it. School was just, I just stopped doing well. I stopped caring. I was like Googling like venues that would allow me to play even though I wasn't 21. Like that was just like my main focus. And I think at first, I think my dad was like, oh my God, she's so young. Like, I'm kind of worried. You know what I mean? I don't want her to get super, caught up in like in this world. And I think I was so adamant about what I wanted to do. And I think, the main thing for me, what I've always thought is like, as long as I'm being really nice to everybody and I really care about what I'm doing, it doesn't really matter what other people think about it. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like, I give 100% into what I do and I love doing it. And I try to be as nice and as respectful as possible to everyone I work with. And, if people think that I just got lucky, I really don't think the music industry is that way. You know what I mean? It doesn't, if the music sucks, the music sucks. You know, to, it's like people have to make their own opinion on the music regardless. Like no one's going to listen to my whole album just because of, who my dad is. I wouldn't do that.
Especially people your age. They don't even know who the Eurythmics is.
No. And they're ruthless on top of it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look at this fucking, you know, so it's, I get it. It's a grueler out there,
Totally.
Like I started comedy at 44 and people are like, what are you too old? And it's always something.
It's always something.
They're always going to come at you with something. And it's mostly geared around their own self-hatred because they didn't go for it in life on something they might have wanted to do.
100%. And I think it's always a tricky topic when people ask me about it because I feel so differently than I feel like a lot of people feel who are in my situation because I just never looked at it that way. I think it was honestly just innocence of being really young. I just didn't really put two and two together. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I get to do this thing that my dad is really, really good at. And he can, he's excited for me. And like, why would people not like that? You know what I mean? That's kind of how I've thought. But as I've gotten older, obviously I've been like, oh, like I've noticed that people will, the second they find out who he is, they either are more inclined to work with me or they're more judgmental. It really goes like one of two ways.
So at a young age, I find music just on the radio when I'm young, riding around in my mom's car. But obviously it's in your house. But what were you listening to? Were you listening to your dad's music? Or were you going to the concerts? Is that how you got turned on to it? Or were you just hanging out at school and other kids were playing stuff? Because you're 22. So who was the people you were listening to back when you first listened to it, music? I think I got lucky because I lived in a household of people who just listened to really good music. And my brothers are were in bands growing up and still are. And the older brother thing, anything my older brothers did was so cool when I was younger. So a lot of my like eclectic music taste came from my brothers. Like I remember my brother Sam playing me Radiohead for the first time when I was 14. And I was like, this is the craziest thing ever. And then I played it to my friends in school and they were like, I don't know what this weird shit is. But I was like, you guys, you don't understand. Like this is the coolest thing. But
I love all music. Like I'll go to any show. Like I just love listening to music. I love learning about different music. I went through a lot of phases. I mean, there was definitely a phase where I was like full-blown grunge emo kid.
That's cool.
Like, like loved heavy metal. That I went through that phase. Then I went through a full R&B phase and soul music. And I think what was great is I had so many friends in my family who just loved music and loved different scenes, and which was cool. I mean, with the music you listen to comes the scene that listens to that music. And I got to make friends just from the music that I liked, which was always like interesting.
Other than your dad's band, what was the first show you went to?
The first show I ever went to, my mom was pregnant and it was the Eurythmics tour. And my mom was like, it was so funny because I feel like you just were being fed music from so young. I have to remember the first show I ever went to. God, I don't even know. I've been to so many shows.
You don't remember? Like, was it a Coachella?
I mean, I'm saying it's obviously your Eurythmics show was the first show that I can like really remember the first show I ever went to. I think the first show I ever went to without my parents, where it was just like me and a friend. Oh, actually, I take this all back. The first show I ever went to was a Kings of Leon concert with my mom.
Oh, that's great.
And that was like the best thing ever.
Hollywood Bowl?
No, they were playing at I think it was the Forum.
Oh, yeah.
And I went with my mom, and she was supposed to go with someone else, and she was like, do you want to come with me? And I remember because it was on a school night, and it was like kind of debatable, and I wanted to go so bad. And I went, and it was just like the most amazing show. I feel like it was the perfect first show because it was like a rock show. That's kind of what you want to see when you're going to see a band for the first time, and it's so exciting.
Oh, yeah, because you're going to get some like full-on theatrics, maybe some smoke.
Oh, it was like the full experience. It was amazing. And then
leather jackets.
Yeah, I think that was the first show that had like a real, like, holy shit impact on me. That I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
So do you start learning to play guitar, or do you play instruments, or what happens here?
For me, it was piano. With my brother, it was guitar. My dad, it was guitar. Like everyone else was guitar, but my dad had a white grand piano in our living room, and I took lessons when I was really young, but people telling me what to do just never went well. I always had to like figure it out myself and then like it. So I was glad I got the lessons to get the basics, but then I started sitting down after school and just kind of playing my own songs. And then because I am a performer and this is what you do, I made my whole family like sit down like it was a concert, and I would play them the one song that I learned like 4 times and be like, what do you guys think? And they were like, yeah, it's great. Like I just loved playing piano from like a really young age. And that's always been my kind of, I feel like you gravitate towards an instrument, and that was just mine. I just loved it. And guitar never really, I mean, I'd love to learn it. I just feel like my brain now is so piano oriented that I would really have to like try.
So do you still play the keys?
I still do.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
That's how I write almost everything.
That's great. And you write all your own stuff?
I write all my own music.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because, that's the only real reward at the end of the day.
It kind of blew my mind when I found out that people didn't. Like, I remember when I was young and I would listen to just like, different music like Katy Perry or, whatever when I was really young. And I remember finding out that they didn't write those songs and like not really getting why. Like I felt like less connected to it in a weird way. Like I was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like she didn't have that experience like I was relating to so hard. But now it's so cool because that's a world that I've kind of gotten into, is writing music for other people, which is like still really cool. But I think at the time, like figuring that out was so weird to me. Like I always just thought that every artist wrote their own songs.
So do you sit down and write every day, or do you just write when you're gearing up to do a record?
I feel like it kind of varies. Like I'll have days where I'll write 4 songs in a day, and then I'll go a week without writing anything. But I kind of got this from my dad. We're very like fast writers. Like we're not the kind of people who want to spend like 2 months on one song. You know what I mean? I want to write it, finish it in like a couple days, go back to it. That's kind of it. It's not like a long drawn out process.
So early on, you get a deal with Warner Brothers?
Yes.
And how does this happen? Are you playing live? Is it old school where an A&R guy came down and saw you? Wow,
that's
really?
how it was. So
and where were you playing?
It wasn't even a show. It's actually the weirdest story, and it kind of was like my fuck you when I was a kid because I was like, told you, but I just so badly wanted to write and play music and play live shows. What happened was, which my dad always laughs, he's like, oh my God, I knew I fucked up when I did this. My dad went on tour and he brought me and I just got to like hang out and he was like, it's game over. Like she's so in love with this like world and environment. He could see it. He was like, oh my God, I have to take her back to school. She's going to be miserable. And I was back at school and I was miserable. I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm not interested in any of this. I just want to play music and go on tour. That's like all I wanted to do. And so I was in school and there was a boy I really liked in my class and I wrote a song about it in class. And then I called my dad and asked if I could come in the studio and record it. And he was like, of course, you can just come in here. I think he had like an hour that he wasn't using it. And I recorded it and I put it on SoundCloud and it blew up.
Wow.
Overnight.
Really?
It was the weirdest thing.
Whoa.
It just got more views and more views and more views. And I was like, this is so cool. At the time, too, SoundCloud was like, you were cool if you found your music on SoundCloud when I was in high school.
Of course.
So I was like, beyond excited.
How do you think people found it? I always wondered that, because a million people put up songs a day, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this track's blowing up. Was there hashtags?
I knew how to post a song on SoundCloud and, like put all the little categories and what it sounds like. And I had friends, obviously, that I was sending it to and they would send it to these people and they would send it. I think honestly, it was one of those like right place, right time. The kind of sound of the music that I made was kind of what was cool on SoundCloud at the time. And I was also 13. I was in that world of what people my age were listening to. And I wrote this song and I loved it. And I just put it out and I kind of forgot about it. And I think I don't even remember. I think it was probably like 2 weeks. And that's when labels started calling my dad, which was hilarious because no one knew at the time that, obviously like I made this in my dad's studio and, it was, and it was weird because it was very old school. They just came to the studio or they came to our house. Like that's literally how it was. And it would be after school. My mom would pick me up from school and she would drive me to the studio. She would drive me to the house and I would meet with these people. And the cool thing about my dad is I think he made it the least intimidating as possible. He was like, Kaya, like be 100% yourself. And if they don't like it, then thank God they don't want to work with you because you don't want to work with anybody who doesn't like you just being yourself.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And I met with all these different people. I even had someone fly to my house on New Year's Eve and come to my front door and be like, we want to sign you so bad. Like it was this crazy experience. And obviously I was like, this is amazing. My dad was like, hold on, this is getting a little weird. And I mean, I ended up meeting with these labels and the people I felt like understood me the most at the time was Warner Brothers. Right. So that I signed with Warner Brothers and it was...
Was it a big deal? I mean, it kind of had to be if people were like, was there a bidding war or anything?
You know what's funny? I still don't know because I was so removed from that at the time. I was just I just knew I got a record deal and it was like the most exciting thing. And then I kind of just took a step back because I was just like, it happened so fast and it was so like, it was just like go, go, go from that point on. And my focus was like the shows and the music. Like that's what I want to do. That's what I'm excited about. And I think what sucked is I started to see all the other parts of the industry that I was like, that I was like, wait a second, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. And I'm really lucky that I have such a great family and really good girlfriends. I've had the same friends since I was in like middle school that kept me in a kind of grounded and just like almost like not shielded, but more like, you know what I mean? Like don't take too much of this to heart and don't like let this really infiltrate who you are anyways.
Like what was going on? You get in there and do they all of a sudden want to bring in writers and make you look different? Isn't that crazy? They love the song you wrote. Mm-hmm. Holy shit, this song's great. And, we're going to have this person that writes songs, and it's proven on SoundCloud. Now let's change your look and let's get these songs in there. It's wild.
It was everything. And at the time, that was like my full emo grunge phase. I had a full mohawk. Wow. I was wearing black eyeliner, white face makeup. I had this whole look that was 100% part of why I got signed. And it really was. I mean, it was like I was 13. I was a total punk emo kid, and I was writing R&B music.
Wow.
And it was this weird thing, which is why it worked. And right. I think they kind of panicked once they signed me and were like, okay, how do we make this marketable? But it was marketable. You know what I mean? Like it was the perfect marketing.
Because it's cool. It hadn't been done.
Totally. And I, at the time, was so impressionable and excited that I was listening to what everyone was telling me. And I'm so lucky that I had my parents who were like, hold on, you got to stay exactly who you are anyways. But it was very like, it started getting like, well, they want to talk to me without my parents, and they want to, it was like this weird and kind of, how do you really feel? And I was like, I don't really know how I feel. Like, I'm just, like hanging out. I'm 13 and
that's crazy shit, music. Right?
It was really wild, but I looking back, it was a really great experience to have because it kind of took that like magical fairy dust element away from the music industry for me, and was like, oh, it like, you really got to be, for lack of a better word, a tough bitch.
Right.
You really do. You have to really stand by what you're doing. And
you got to Joan Jett 'em.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that was kind of the takeaway. But people always ask me like, oh my God, that must have been such a bad experience. I would never say anything bad about anybody, but I'm really glad that I had the experience just to know. You know what I mean? That's totally what happens to so many people.
So after the deal, how does this work out? The record comes out. Do you guys make some kind of middle ground on your look and videos and stuff, and then it just doesn't happen? What goes down?
I think the hardest part is it really felt like I was fighting for what I originally wanted, which is not how I thought that was going to go. You know what I mean? It was like I was fighting tooth and nail just to be presented the way that I wanted to be presented. And I think, honestly, it was just, it felt like it was like I was just so badly wanting to just put out this original idea, the reason they signed me. You know what I mean? Right. And it ended up being this whole, like, it got bigger than I ever thought it would. And it was amazing. I was on tour. I went on the Warped Tour.
Wow.
I was like 15, did the whole 3 months. And it was like an amazing experience. But I remember just, I was there and I was just like, God, I so badly know what I could do to just catapult this situation, and it would be so amazing. But I feel like I always felt like I had to run something by someone, and it was getting shut down. Right. Like, that's what it was. And I was like, damn it, this is not how I thought it was going to be. But like I said, it was such an amazing experience. There's so many opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten if I wasn't in that situation. But I was definitely happy to kind of take a step back when I did.
So after the Warped Tour, did they end up dropping you and you go independent?
No, they didn't drop me. I don't even really know what happened, but it was kind of a situation of just like, I think it was kind of a truce. Like we kind of were just like, look, this isn't working. Yeah. And so I ended up leaving, and it was like a very weird thing for me because at the time I was 17, and so I wasn't even 18 yet, and I'd left Warner Brothers, and I left, or I don't even know the right way to put it, but I basically was like, what the fuck do I do now? And so that's when I went to Nashville, and I said to my dad, I was like, I really just want to write music. I just want to figure out what I want to sound like now, because I'm all jumbled up and I don't really know what I want. And I ended up going to Nashville. And while I was there, I was like meeting with this real estate agent because I loved Nashville, and I was kind of looking if I wanted to, get a place there. And it was my last day, and I was writing with all these people. It was such an amazing experience. And the real estate agent was like, I have this friend who lives here, who's a really cool producer. You should work with him. I'll set you up if you go tomorrow. And I was like, okay, well, tomorrow's my last day. I could go, for like an hour, just see. And it was Jamie Liddell. And I had no idea who he was. And I walked into his house, and he had his wife there, and he just had a baby. And I walked into his studio, and he built the walls of the studio, just every synthesizer you can possibly think of, every machine, every gadget, all this super weird, crazy shit. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And I'm thinking, the people in Nashville, I'm going to get along with people my age, like writing camps. No, I ended up vibing with Jamie, who was like 40 years old. And I don't know what it was. I walked into that studio and we just like clicked, and I extended my trip and we made a whole record together. Wow. And it was this weird R&B soulful electronic record that was so different than what, my original pop stuff was on Warner. I felt like it was the perfect transition record to kind of get me out of that pop machine that I was kind of in before. And I was like, no, I'm a weird artist. Like, this is the kind of music that I wanted to make. And it was fucking awesome. And we ended up putting out the record, and then COVID happened. So I didn't really get to do anything with it, but it didn't really matter. It was definitely like, this is like the transition record that I needed. And it was really cool to me.
And you put it out independent? Or okay, that's great.
Just put it out. Like, I was just like, honestly, I just want to make music again for the love of just making music. And it was great, and I still love all the songs on it. I made all the music videos I made with my friends. Like, you know what I mean? It was a very just like organic, cool record, and it was really fun.
So I was reading during COVID that you were diagnosed with OCD.
Yes.
And did that just come on from I know a lot of people had heavy OCD traits during it, of like extra scrubbing everything and cleaning and, did I touch that? Walk back 3 steps? Did I,
Totally.
So was it triggered by COVID for you?
Well, it was weird because, I mean, my family always says I was a really anxious kid. When I was not until I was about 7 or 10 years old, I probably would say, I had just like really bad anxiety. And I would tell my parents all the time, I'd be like, I don't understand why I'm so on edge and so anxious. And I couldn't figure it out. And it was that like obsessive thing. I would obsess over things. If it wasn't the way my hair was, I would do my hair 100 times in the mirror before school. The way I would put on my shoes, I would take them on and off and on. It was just like this weird thing that I thought everyone had. I just didn't really think about it. And then when COVID happened, you kind of had to sit with yourself. And I lived with my boyfriend at the time, and it was kind of I think he was like, whoa, you do a lot of things that not a lot of people do, and you drive yourself crazy over it. And I was like, oh, this kind of doesn't add up, that everyone doesn't feel this way. And I think I ended up seeing a therapist, and she was like, you need to talk to this psychologist. And I was in like the top, I think like 10%, like worst OCD. They were like, we can't even believe that you've been having this for this many years. And I was like, well, I didn't really know that this was like, I thought everybody was just like
they couldn't believe you were functioning.
Totally.
Right.
They couldn't believe I was functioning. And the problem was, though, is the immediate reaction was like, here are the like boatload of medications that we're going to put you on. And they were basically like, they were just kind of like suppress everything.
Right.
Medications.
Yeah.
Like,
Just
it wasn't
numbers.
the OCD. It was just
numbers.
So I was like, I'm just not going to do it. I can't do that, especially because I'm an artist too. And everything I do is about how I feel. And if I feel nothing, that's like the worst case scenario. So I just started researching it and realizing that like, oh shit, there is a way to deal with this without like completely knocking myself out every day with different medications. And I just started doing it. It was really hard. But as I was doing it, I called my dad. I was telling him about it, and I was like, I have just had the most hellish of a year trying to figure this out. I want to just come and make music. Like, let's go write in your studio. And he has a studio in Nashville, and he was like, yeah, like, obviously I'm not doing anything because no one's doing anything. Like, come over. And so I flew to Nashville, and we were just going to write a couple songs, and we ended up making a whole album in 2 weeks.
Man.
And that's the album that's coming out, which is so exciting. And it was honestly one of my favorite experiences, because I think going into it, not knowing that I was writing an album made me a lot less tense. And I just kind of was just writing to write, which was really cool.
When you get out to Nashville and start working on it, which by the way, the record comes out September 30th.
It does.
And it's called If Things Go South. When you get into the studio with your dad, how does that work? Is he playing all the instruments? Does he have some guys from Nashville? Because I'm listening to this record, and obviously the musicianship is next level.
Thank you.
And especially the bass on If Things Go South. Whoever's playing the bass on that is fucking grooving, man.
The only people in the room the entire time we made the record was my dad's engineer, Jesse, who I love. He's awesome. And he played the bass on If Things Go South.
Wow.
And my dad and me. And that was literally it. And it was such an awesome way to do it. And that's how I made the record with Jamie, too. It was just me and him. And it was like... you occasionally bring in someone here and there. We brought in someone to play the trumpet on If Things Go South. Or no, Young in New York. We brought someone in to play the trumpet. And it was just like, it was such an awesome, because once you get that creative energy going and it's just 3 people in there, you can get shit done so fast.
You can.
Because it's just like...
No one's going, what about this?
Haven't
Let's try
asked someone
that.
to come in.
I like my solo over here. You know?
Exactly. It was just like, no, let's just do it. And so... yeah, my dad, I played some piano on the record. My dad played guitar. Jesse was playing the bass. My dad would play the bass. You know what I mean? It was
Who
just
was playing drums? Just programmed?
Jesse. I mean, it was literally like we were literally like just the 3 of us kind of putting this together. But obviously my dad produced it, and, all the chords and the melodies on everything was what he wrote. And I was writing all the lyrics and the melodies for the songs. And it was awesome.
Well, you got a good record here. It's I think
you.
this If Things Go South, this is a great fucking song. A lot of hooks on this record, which is for somebody that's, like 3 records in, it's just really good songwriting. And that song really knocked me out. So when I first got it, I was like, they're like, hey, what about Dave Stewart's daughter? And I was like, oh, let's give it a spin,
Yeah.
And I really love promoting new artists, so I'm always down to check it out. And I also like to have women on the show because it's very rare to get women on the show, in the industry. Matter of fact, somebody pitched a band to me recently, and I said, oh, great, it's got a female front person. Oh, that'd be great to have her on. And they said, oh, well, she's kind of busy, so just talk to the guitar player. I go, no, what are you talking about? I'm trying to have more females on the show and give them a voice and get out there.
Absolutely. I think it's been such an awesome time for women right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, well, not right now, but I'm saying.
No, for music, though, there's a lot of great.
I mean, it's just, it's actually, I was talking with someone about this the other day they were like, it must be really hard to be a woman in music. Like, you've probably experienced so many things. You know what I mean? And
right.
And in my head, I was just like, you kind of have to be a ballsy as any gender to go into this industry. It really doesn't matter what you are. Yeah. Appreciate you saying that you love having women on the show, because I think that's really cool. But it's also something that I forget, that I'm like, wow, that is like, that is a cool thing to be a woman in music, because it's not an easy thing to do.
No, not at all. And I mean, some of my favorite artists on the planet are women, including who I think is the greatest of all time was Carole King, who put out Tapestry, which is a record I've been listening to every Sunday since I was around 9. Yeah. So, and then of course, over the years, everybody, Deborah Harry, Lucinda Williams, Annie Lennox, I mean, on and on and on. It's just like, Karen O, I think, is probably the greatest for me of all time for, front person, artistic radicalness. I mean, of course, we know the heritage. Without Deborah Harry and people like that, there's no Karen O. Without any, Chrissy Hine, all that. But Karen O, to me, just blows my mind when I see her.
I mean, it's what's so amazing is me being a new artist, and like in this generation, the women I get to look back on, like, it was so much harder back then. You know what I mean? I think like the people that I have as examples, like looking back at Debbie Harry and looking back at all these, you know what I mean? Like unbelievable, like powerhouse, like women. It's like, oh, like, you know what I mean? That's what I want to kind of look back on and base myself off of, because it's like, they were kind of trailblazing this whole, like, there wouldn't be us and people like me making music now if it wasn't for them. And it was a lot harder, you know?
Well, somebody like Ann Wilson really taught me a lot about rock and singing and commanding it. And there she is, a woman, and she's also like, hey, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I don't care what you say. We're playing, and this is the band, and we rock.
100%. And
Man.
I think that I'm one of the best experiences for me was being on the Warped Tour because, I mean, it was all dudes.
Yeah.
And I think luckily, I still talk to her. There was a woman who worked on the crew, and she was such a fucking badass. She had tattoos probably everywhere you possibly could. I don't think there was an inch of her body that didn't have tattoos on it. And I kind of gravitated towards her on the tour, and I was like, I texted her a couple months ago, or a couple years ago, and I was like, thank you so much for being on that tour and like riding that shit out, because if you weren't there, I would have had no idea what I was doing, because it was so intense, the Warped Tour, and it was so like incredible at the same time, but it really did put things in perspective for me that like, wow, like I am one of probably like 30 women on this tour that probably has 1,000 people on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like, and the women who were on that tour really relied on each other. You know what I mean? Like we really looked out for each other, and like it was so badass, but it also like kind of put me in check a little bit, because I was like, okay, if I want people to come to my show, I was selling water bottles for people to like literally just come and watch me play. Like it was what I love about Warped Tour is how it puts everyone on the same playing field, and no one gives a shit about you. Because you're like, if you really want this and you really want, and you have the potential to build your crowd, and you can,
oh yeah,
you've got to really just be willing to do anything. And that was kind of the mindset you have to have. Like I would sit up and, you know, like think at night about like, how am I going to get more people at the San Diego show than I did at the Colorado show? And you know what I mean? And you have you literally can do whatever you want in order to do that. But it was also like a really rough experience. It's not an easy thing to be on a tour.
They
like
had comedy one year. Mm-hmm. And my friend did it, Chase Bernstein. And she was just like, it was an absolute nightmare. We're just doing comedy out in a parking lot, and you're on a tour bus with like 20 people.
Yeah.
And you're just driving around America. But she did it, and fucking hats off for her to do it, because that's one of the hardest things, to do comedy at this rock show that are all kids out there.
Yeah.
She didn't even realize till she got on the road. She got, oh, this is just kids.
Yeah, it's a bunch of like 15 and 16-year-olds.
She's doing adult comedy. And now she's signed on for like, I don't know, 3 weeks or whatever it was.
It's absolutely nuts. It's nuts. And I remember, well, for me, it was kind of taboo that I was doing it, because I needed to have like a legal appointed tutor on the road, because I was still in school.
Oh, wow.
So I would do these shows, which were like absolutely insane, and then literally do algebra. Like I literally had to go and sit, because I could only legally work a certain amount of hours in a day.
Oh, yeah.
And so like when everyone else was like, you know, like raging and like partying after the show, like I was like sitting in there with this like sweet tutor, like trying to pass my like GCSE. Like, do you know what I mean? It was just like this crazy experience, but
you're like in that show Love.
No, literally. It was like, it was so ridiculous. I was just like, I don't know how on earth I'm going to be able to like do this. But it was so, at the same time, I mean, it was so fun. It was so fun. I've
been listening to the record. I got to tell you, this song "Independence" is just fantastic. And I was talking about Lucinda Williams earlier, which I think "Car Wheels on the Gravel Road" is one of the greatest records ever made. But this really has a flavor. It's not a country song, and it's not, but it has this vibe of something that would come out of Nashville.
Totally.
You know, and a little bit of Chris Stapleton, maybe a little bit of Tennessee whiskey kind of flavor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is exactly where this came from, because there's this song by Chris Stapleton. I got to look it up, because me and my dad heard it, and I literally looked at him and I go, we're getting it tattooed. Like, we're getting it tattooed. This is like literally the greatest song. This is ridiculous. I'm pulling it. Starting Over.
Starting Over. That song is a masterpiece.
Unbelievable.
Especially when it's him and his wife singing it. They think they did it at the Nashville Music Awards, so it's a little different and even better.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my, look, I got goosebumps right now because it's beautiful.
My whole family and all my friends know that like literally anything can make me cry. Any movie, any song. That song, I literally thought I was going to hyperventilate. I was like, it's so amazing. And it got me listening to so much Chris Stapleton. And when I was in this funk where I was like, all music sucks. The only thing that matters is like Nirvana, and that was the only thing that was ever real. And I was just like in this headspace of like, what am I going to do? And I was like, I just need to literally sit down and write a song about how I feel right now on a guitar. And this is the kind of music I'm listening to right now. So I just going to write a song and see what comes out of it. And I was sitting on the porch, which is exactly how this song sounds like it should be written.
Yeah.
I was sitting on a porch with my dad, and he was playing, and I just sang it, and we voice noted it, and we recorded it the exact same way it sounded on the voice note, and that was literally it.
It's a great song.
It's awesome, and I think it sounds like a really old song, but what it's about is so current and so relatable to people my age. You know what I mean? I think it's definitely inspired by that, though, and that kind of Nashville feel. And I needed something on the record like that because that's some of my favorite stuff.
What are the plans? The record comes out September 30th. Mm-hmm. Are you on a label now, or is it another indie?
I'm on an indie label. I'm on my dad's label, Bay Street Records.
That's great.
Which is fucking awesome because it's just a great label.
And you guys shot like a film for each song, or what's going on there?
So basically, I've had this idea for years, and it was when I saw Lemonade by Beyonce, I was like, this is fucking genius. This is the coolest fucking thing. How can I make something that feels like how grand that was, and how there was a song for every single, a video, and it all like played out together. How can I do that on my scale? And when I got diagnosed with OCD, I kept describing it to people that like, it feels like you're trapped with two sides of your personality. Like there's the logical side and then there's the irrational side, and you just are fighting with each other all the time. And I was like, what if I put those two characters in a house and like had these two sides of my personality, which I have, and kind of have them hash it out through these songs, because that's really what these songs are about, was kind of just like fighting with myself, figuring myself out all the time. And so we made a film with an amazing director, Paul Boyd, who is amazing and really helped me, kind of pull out what I was trying to say. And I shot it in Santa Paula, which is this random town in California.
I know where it is.
Yeah. And we found this kind of dilapidated, literally thought I was going to get a disease from just standing in it, house. And we shot a video for every song, and every video was so thought out about why it was that way, why there were certain things in the video that made it make sense. And I wrote kind of little dialogue which was dialogue, because I write all the time, that I was kind of saying to myself for years, and I put it all together and basically made this really awesome film, which is 10 music videos, but when you watch it all together, it's like a movie.
That's awesome.
Super cool.
And it comes out the same day as the record?
It comes out all at the same time.
And where will the videos be on MTV? Will these be on MTV?
I wish they were going on MTV.
Yeah, but what's it on, YouTube?
It's going to be, we're kind of in the process of figuring that all out right now, because it's such a huge body of work that I want people to watch the individual videos, but I also want people to see it all together.
Right.
So we're kind of figuring out how that's going to work out, but it's definitely a really cool project that I'm excited, because it feels like I've got like a full body of work, which is like, you can really totally understand the visuals, the record, everything was really thought out. So
what about touring? Are you going to go out on tour?
That's the plan. I mean, that's the plan.
You got a band?
I've got a great band that I love, and I'm super excited to get back on tour again. I mean, COVID, I feel like, was so rough for touring musicians, because like all is just, traveling. And
it's the only way you can make money too.
Oh, it was a literal nightmare. I remember calling my backup singer, one of my best friends who I've known for years. She's been singing with me since I was literally 13. And I FaceTimed her and I was like, how are you doing? She goes, terrible. I was like, okay, same. Thank God. Like, I'm just going to start calling you every day because we're both in the same boat right now. We were like, what are we going to do? But yeah, I'm so excited to get back on the road and start up with that again.
We kind of passed over it, but because I know people are going to be like, well, what did she do for the OCD if she didn't take the medication? What did you do? Because what I find really helps me is a lot of exercise, a lot of clean eating. I cut out sugar and a lot of good stuff happened.
I started creating a routine. I mean, I did cognitive behavioral therapy,
What's that?
It's basically its own version of exposure therapy. It's like really diving into like, because OCD is all about avoiding emotion, avoiding that panicky feeling all the time. It's like
so
diving
you keep moving,
into
doing shit?
Yeah, you just kind of avoid it. I mean, and that's like, it always used to annoy the shit out of me when people would be like, oh, so you probably just wash your hands like 50 times a day. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you knew, it's so many things. Your brain is like this all the time about a million different things. And I think that therapy really helped me. It's kind of like, instead of shying away from like, oh, like if I just, fix my hair again, I won't have that like panicky feeling. It's like, well, maybe don't, and see how long it takes you till you just can't handle it anymore. And that really helped me, like kind of knowing, honestly, the main thing that helped me was the diagnosis, is just knowing that I wasn't crazy and that I didn't have to feel like this all the time. The other thing was routine. That was huge for me. Like finding a healthy routine that I know like makes me feel good. Like working out was huge for me. Like I work out all the time. Not eating shit that makes me feel like shit, because if I feel like shit, the worse it gets. A lot of it too was being a musician, honestly, was a huge part of it. I was constantly go all the time. That's how I've always been. And kind of taking a step back and being like, let me see how I feel before I start going 100% all the time, and not just like putting it on the back burner. But I mean, it was really, more than anything, just knowing that I had it. Like now usually I hate the internet, but it was the best thing because I was finding so many people that I could talk to. I ended up emailing this guy who had a book on OCD and basically how to kind of combat it without medication. And I emailed him and I was just like, hi, I think I'm dying. Like, please help me. And he was like, oh, you got to buy my book. Like, you'll feel so. And then like, I've made like weird connections with so many people through like the internet and understanding that we all kind of feel the same way. And that was amazing. I mean, just really diving into it rather than just being like, cool, I have that. Like, pump me up with whatever you have.
Oh, yeah, that shit's so bad, man. Oh, the numbers. Just like... It just didn't fix anything. It just made... And also, it's the worst thing ever to do for an artist, because then they don't have any more drive. They're just like, oh, I'm over here.
And I was games. Like, the last thing I wanted was also to get used to that, being not actually dealing with the issue, just like... And there's some people 100% who cannot do it without medication, and I get that. I was almost at that point where I was like, I actually don't know if I can do this. But if you have the willpower and the strength to at least try not to, I always say that I would. I mean, I would just like, give it a shot. But that's also speaking for myself, because you never know.
Well, thanks for doing the show.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to people hearing this record. It's really good. It's really good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, like I said, If Things Go South is the record. Comes out on the 30th, and that's the title track, and it just really knocked me out. And this Independent song is just killer. And until I fixed it, acoustic, I'm a sucker for just an acoustic tune. And it was really cool to have you on. So give everybody your Instagram and where they can find you and everything.
Yeah, my Instagram is Kaya Stewart. It's pretty much Kaya Stewart on everything. So that's
Kaya
Stewart.
And hopefully we'll see you out there on tour. You're going to play any shows in town?
Hopefully soon. That's the plan. It's kind of, getting everything together and really excited to share it all. So thank you for having me.
Are you a comedy fan? You watch stand-up comedy?
I'm such a comedy fan.
Really? Who do you like?
Really am. I love Bill Burr.
Oh, man, he's one of my best friends.
I love Bill Burr. I actually went to my first comedy show the other day at the Improv.
Oh, yeah?
It was so hilarious. I saw Bobby Lee.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
So funny. And I just love comedy. Especially, I feel like it's so something that I know I couldn't do. So I'm so fascinated by it that I'm like, it's such a cool job to have.
Well, you got to come to the show. I would
love to.
Yeah, I go on at the Comedy Store all the time.
Awesome.
All right. Well, there you guys go. Follow her on Instagram and all the socials. Get this record. Comes out September 30th. And we'll look forward to those videos and maybe a live show here across America. Thanks for tuning in. Leave a review and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube and all the other places. Candles lit.